Hi, guys. Welcome to the Breakout Podcast. I'm your host, Madeline, and today we have Chris, who is the founder of Gusher.
Thanks for having me, Maddie.
Of course. So, could we just start off with you telling me a little bit about Gusher and what you do and how you got there?
Oh, sure. Gusher is what's called a performance-based equity platform. So what happens is instead of a founder needing capital to get a company off the ground, what they do really is need people. And so these people apply to join the company in exchange for what's called performance-based equity. Nobody gets a damn thing in the company unless the company is able to succeed, able to reach its goals, and that includes us. So what I say to founders is imagine that you had a million or 2 million in the bank account right this second. And then what would you do with that? How would you build out your company? Who would you hire? What would you put together? And then Gusher that because we do it literally all day, every day. Everything from B2B, B2C, B2B2C, and everything in between, from consumer goods to manufacturing, SaaS, fintech, AR, VR, AI, gaming, medical devices, prop tech, platform, you name it, we've got it, and we've got greater than an 80% success rate, which is really, really high.
It sounds like you've rehearsed that quite a few times and have
No,
had
I
to
can say it in
explain
my
that to
sleep.
many people.
I can say it in my sleep, Maddie. I've done it so many times.
That's a really cool approach to the industry, though. I've never seen it done like that before. So you essentially just take out the investors part?
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way. I mean, if you have no money, really, what options are left? It's something that I picked up when I was really in New York. We never needed money to really do anything with a business until the business got to at least the 10 million in sales volume level. Then we would need it for things like what we call land grabs, which is trying to take over a vertical or expand massively. But to be able to get to typically 10 million in sales, higher valuations, you don't need capital. What you need is the fundamental people. And so what we called it when I much younger, we called it finagling. So if you needed a property, well, you'd go find a landlord and try to do a deal with them that didn't require capital. If you needed marketing, well, you would use the excess capacity that they had to be able to get those first sales and maybe do some sort of revenue share. And so if you needed patent, well, you'd bring the patent attorney in on the deal. And so what we did is really standardized a process that I've been doing basically forever and turned it into a platform. And voila, it works for the average person.
That's very interesting. How did you come up with this idea?
Sure. Well, I mean, we've always built, or I should say, when I say we, my companies, we've done a lot of that from the very beginning, from just actually not having anything in the start. And even once we had capital and once we had money, what I noticed is that it really didn't necessarily create great companies. It made them almost in a way weak. When you have no capital, no cash, it forces you to create a different type of company. What do I mean by that? Well, instead of having capital that you burn and trying to find this magical product market fit that you typically see in startup circles, what ends up happening is you must create a company that becomes self sustaining right from the very beginning. So that what happens is you put sales and marketing at the front end of the company creation, whereas all the development stuff and product creation and all this other stuff comes afterwards. And that's really where it should be. The sales validation and the marketing should come at the beginning, almost in a way before you have a product is what a founder should be testing out before they start something, before they create something. And that's what really this does.
That's very interesting. So, how do you have such a broad scope of clientele? Like you said, you do
Yeah,
like B2C, C2C, like all of the
sure.
whole scope of sales. How do you have that big of a clientele?
Sure. Well, we've got, if it in terms of the people themselves, we look at really businesses as really almost all being the same. I know it's going to sound kind of hokey, but they are. They're really nothing but different variations of people, philosophy, and property. They're all going to have different people. They're going to have a different philosophy or a way of looking at things, and they're going to have different assets, different intellectual property, different physical property. But everything is really just a variation or shades of that. So with us, I've done a lot of companies myself, and I had exposure to all these different types of companies. I ran the largest business brokerage in New York for a period of time. I'd had manufacturing companies, I've had medical device companies, and when you start companies, you're exposed to all these things. But when you start a lot of companies, you start seeing patterns. So we've got everything from, 75-year-old grandmas in South Africa to 20-year-old college students that have successfully used Gusher to get their company off the ground. In everything from medical devices to retail, fashion, to software, to food, to nutraceuticals, anything you can possibly think of.
That's amazing. So, do you typically see your clientele actually keep their companies stay afloat? Because I know a lot of startups tend to crash within 5 years,
Yeah.
especially if they're tech startups. So, do you see them stay afloat longer than that?
We've seen it right now, but we're still actually a little bit too soon. So at our stage, we say 80% success. That means where they're really generating cash, they're able to become self-sustaining. So we don't know the long-term trend. We think that the long-term trend will be higher than average success and failure rates, and that has to do with what we call the vested interest market, the VIM, okay? So what do I mean by that? Our companies are built upon what are called VIM. And when you build upon a company that's built upon Vim, I'll give you a quick example, you have a higher success rate. So we've got a dog food company on our platform called Happy Howl. Okay. Now, I don't know what you know about dog food, but it's an extremely capital intensive business.
Mhm.
These companies have been entrenched for more than 100 years, and it's brutal. They don't give up, shelf space or sales very easily. But this gentleman by the name of Colin Buckley came into our platform, and the story is that basically he had a sick dog, and he basically took it to the vet, and the vet said, put your dog on this dog food, then another dog food, and so on. But the dog kept dying. So he hacked together his own dog food in his kitchen over 2, 3, 4 months and was able to keep the dog alive. The dog came magically to life over 3, 4, 5 months. And he said, hey, I want to start a dog food company. So we went ahead, put him up on Gusher. He did not listen to me. And he brought on these teams of experts, these people that have managed 50 million, 100 million, $200 million budgets, companies okay? And literally 6 weeks later, the company imploded. It failed miserably, all right? But then he listened to what I told him and he built his second company up the right way. This next version, the second team has more than 10 million in terms of sales valuation. They're exploding. They have national distribution. They're growing 40% month over month, doubling basically every 10 weeks and exploding in one of the most competitive industries. And they've done it with $0 in terms of how they've been able to do it. Okay, zero in one of the most capital intensive industries. His second team all had something in common the first team did not. I want you to think like you're an 8-year-old now, okay? An 8-year-old. Don't overthink it. This is a dog food company. What do you think his second team had in common that his first team did not?
Creativity,
What did 8-year-old say? Creativity. So, no,
color.
they owned dogs, all right? They were dog owners, but they didn't have kids. So they were like dog parents. They ate dog, breathe dog, live dog, shit dog. They are dog zealots. They really got dogs. And so that's what I mean by the vested interest market, the VIM. When you build up your company upon VIM, it fundamentally creates a different type of company than if it was just transactional and paying people. And so literally it makes a big, big difference in terms of the success of the company. It makes a huge impact.
10 million is absolutely insane from coming from tanking right before.
Well, you would think so, but it's really not. It's really the process, and that's what we've kind of figured out. I don't want to say that it works for everything because it doesn't. We have a 20% failure rate at this stage, but with 80% of the people, and it ranges all different types of people all across the globe, all different ethnicity, religion, demographics, income, education level, the process works.
That's just so amazing.
It's
Like
cool.
you're helping out so many people doing the work that you do. Like doubling that company's revenue is incredible.
And they do it every 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. They're doing it right now. Yeah.
That's just incredible. And all they had to do was just think like an 8-year-old.
That's it. But no, that's true though. But when you surround yourself with the right people, you're all pulling in the same direction. It's not like everybody's fighting for different things. They're all there to create the greatest, basically, dog food company that can be created, and they're doing it the right way. They're the people that all have dogs. They're the people that get dogs.
Yeah, for sure. Just a side note, you speak very, very clearly and coherently. And do you practice it a lot?
No, I grew up in Ohio, and supposedly Ohio has no accent or anything else, and that's just the way I brought up. That it never had anything, any instruction or anything else. I wish I did, but I never did.
That's amazing. So how'd you end up getting to New York?
Okay, well, I went to college at NYU, so I ended up there, had a scholarship, everything else, and got the heck out of Ohio. I couldn't stand Ohio.
That's completely understandable.
Yeah, if you've ever been there. I was literally in a car accident at an investor conference about back in October for one of our portfolio companies, and I'm like, yeah, I still don't miss Ohio. Although they had great ice cream where I grew up. That's the one thing I do miss.
Fair enough. Do you have any indicators on how you base a company's success before they actually become successful? Like, do you ever turn down any companies?
Sure. Well, let me give you a little bit of insight. So when we started Gusher, and we still do it to this day, we have something called a J score. A J score are these 10 points that we measure something on to see if there's any correlation between what we think is going to happen and what happens. Okay. Now, I'm a big believer in market economics. I tend to think that it's almost impossible to really go ahead and beat the market or beat certain things with actually your knowledge of the market and everything else. Because if you've seen it over time, it's really, really difficult. You know, Warren Buffett was able to do it, a couple key investors, etc. But with startups, they're a different animal. Why am I bringing this up? Because we went ahead and tracked these startups, and we'd have companies come into our platform that we're like, how the hell is this going to work? Or, this idea is so bad. I mean, it's like ridiculously bad that there's no way this can happen. Or the person, let's say, had, no technical ability or no emotional ability, meaning that they were just, wired a certain way that they couldn't relate to people. And we're like, this is going to fail or this is going to fail. We did our little ratings and everything else. Now, here's the thing, and I did believe this ahead of time, that it wouldn't show a trend, but there's no way of knowing. This is the thing that we concluded. So with startups, many of those bad ideas are very much the fertilizer for something that becomes great. So even though you may have a crappy idea, even though you may have something that is horrible, even though you may have something that has been done in numerous ways and there's tons of competition, it doesn't matter so long as you start. Because wherever you start, that's just a starting point. That doesn't mean that you're going to end up there. And even with my own companies, the same thing has happened. I've had it where, I just had, a raw idea or a raw thing, and it may have been in this one type of vertical, but by the end of it, we're doing something completely 100% different, or maybe different, verbiage with the marketing, different, the product changes and evolves. So if you're starting out with crap, that's the way it should be, because that crap is the fertilizer for those great flowers, the great ideas, that great fruit and vegetables that come from it. Well, you need fertilizer that smells like shit, and that's usually bad ideas in the beginning stages.
I
It's
completely
true.
agree with that. Yeah, like all ideas have potential. You just have to really go after it. I think like the hardest part is just starting it.
Well, I think that people have been taught, and it's almost been pounded out of them from the time that they're a child, that, you have all these external voices, a bad idea, don't do this, don't blah, blah, blah. And yet you only have that one little internal voice that is saying, yes, I can do it. Yes, I should do it. Yes, let's see where this goes. And I don't know if you can see right now, but I'm getting goosebumps because, people ask me like, how do you know a company's going to be successful or whatever it is? I don't, but I know they've got an 80% chance of success because if they follow what the voice is telling them inside their damn head, chances are it's going to go ahead and work out. And I also think that before you die, that is the whole point of being here on the damn face of the earth, to let out that voice, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, to be able to go ahead and untap that human potential of what's inside you and give it a shot, because that's why we're here.
I agree with you on that. Like I'm definitely experiencing that right now being 19 is that I just have to go and just go for it. Like just do it.
Yeah, just start. And this is the thing, are you going to have good days? Yes, there's a couple. Are you going to have bad days? Yes, and there's quite a good amount of those. Are you going to have these average days that almost in a way feels like it's sucking the life out of you? Yes, and those are brutally hard. But the one thing, there's a key is that once you make that decision to go down that road, okay, what we call the roller coaster of awesomeness. That's what we call entrepreneurship. You got to realize that there's only one person in the world. not your partners, not your family, not the government, not the weather, not the time of year, not the economy. None of these things can go ahead and stop that roller coaster of awesomeness. Who is the only person in this world, Maddie, that can stop that?
Me.
Damn right. And so long as you know that and remember that, it's your choice as to whether or not you stop. And so just don't stop. Don't stop. It seems, like it's some, really, important and so, crazy things that have to be difficult and whatever. You just don't stop. Do you iterate? Sure. Do you change? Yes. Do you evolve? Yes. But you don't stop.
I agree with you on that 100%.
It
I think
works.
that's such a hard thing though to do, to not stop, because it's so easy to get into your head, especially nowadays, like with social media, you see someone doing just a tad bit better than you and you're like, I should just give up.
Yeah, but who the hell puts up their failures? I mean, 99.999% of all social media is people just showing their successes.
Hmm.
Nobody shows really the hard work and the crap and everything else because guess what? Nobody's like, woe is me. Nobody jumps on the bandwagon and says, yeah, look at him. He's failing. Awesome. But it's only failing really if you stop. Otherwise, it's just a temporary setback, a temporary obstacle. And that's the path to any success that I've done, any success that I've ever seen. I mean, I'm dealing with certain issues right now with a company that a year ago had nothing, and now it's growing so insane. A different type of company. It's growing so insane. They're like, how do we keep up with this in terms of the internal structure? So it's just another set of problems. The problems don't ever go away. It's just a different set of problems. And more importantly, you get better at it. It's like training yourself and going to the gym. Yeah, first month, second month, third month sucks. But once you get past that mark of 3, 4, 5 months, you start getting kind of good at it. After a year and a half, 2 years, you're pretty damn good. You're better than 99.999% of the population.
So do you take bad days for yourself? Like, do you have those lazy days where you just lay in bed all day, or
No.
do you always just try to get up?
Here's the thing. I literally don't. And I'm not saying like, hey, I'm some Superman or something else, but I've trained myself at this stage that even if I feel bad, even if I'm sick, almost to my detriment, I will go ahead and do what I need to do. So I made the decision, whatever that decision was. I only make decisions once. So if I decide to do them, I've learned, and I've had to train myself to do this. I do not revisit that decision. All right. So I've decided to do X in volume and get this company to a certain place. I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, I'm feeling bad. Oh, it's whatever and this and that. For example, that car crash I had in Cleveland yeah, it was Cleveland in October. All right. I had been in a car crash around 4 o'clock. I had to speak at 6 o'clock. And I could show you a picture right now, but I took a head on collision where the car was completely a loss, a total. So I'm standing there. I'm in shock, okay? And I'm talking to these people and everything else. And my people come because I have people in the area. They come pick me up and whatever else. And they're like, we should take you to a hospital. Now, maybe it was wrong. I probably think in hindsight, I wouldn't suggest people do this. But I went to that damn investor conference. I spoke. They told me it was a great job, everything else. And then I went to the ER afterwards because I just don't revisit decisions. Thank God I didn't die because that was probably one of my dumbest ones. But that's the thing that goes along with it. You get better at it. You just get better at it.
Yeah, when I think I was 16 when this happened. Yeah, because I had my driver's license at the time. I like got into an accident and I was in the ICU, but at the same time, I was about to finish building like my vending machine company.
Right.
Like I was getting the final contract signed and like all that stuff was going on. And so I was in the ICU, but I was like begging my mom for my phone so I could be making these phone calls. And the doctors were trying to come in and like check in on me. And I was like, no. I need to focus on this first. Which
Exactly.
looking back, I'm like, I probably should have like I was in the ICU.
But I mean, but that's, entrepreneurs are kind of sick like that. We are, and the time that you take a break is when really the job is done. And even then you
Mhm.
don't, even vacation. I was talking to one of my people and he goes on vacation and what he does is he slips away in the early morning hours or the late hours and he goes and does business as he's on vacation. He's just wired that way. He's wired that way.
For sure. That's exactly how I am. It's so funny. Like, I see people because I work in addiction recovery too,
Yep.
and I see people all the time. Like, I have this really good friend, and he overdosed, fell off a two-story building, and like kept having seizures. And I went to go visit him for like multiple days in a row, and he's sitting there on his iPad building a company.
Yeah.
And he's like showing me pictures, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, look what I'm doing! Like, look at my website." And I'm like, "What?" Like,
There's a fine line between insanity and brilliance. And that's the
yes,
way
and
that
he had
I would.
nerve damage on the left side of his brain, and he
Oh,
was still doing that.
well, the side that he needed to work was working. So,
Obviously, I was like, okay, Conan, you do your
oh,
thing. If
that's
it brings
tough.
you joy.
If it does, absolutely.
How do you like keep yourself around positive and successful people and foster that in your clients and community, if that makes any sense?
Sure. It's really, I'm not going to make that part easy because it's not. All right. The key is really pushing away the people that aren't positive. When you do that, it almost in a way you naturally attract the right audience, the right target, the right market, the whatever the hell you want to call it, the right people, the right tribe, really just by eliminating the people that are negative in your way. Now, having said that, it's always good to not put yourself in the land of like eternal sunshine, meaning that surrounding yourself with yes men, always agreeing with you. So one of the things that I do is I don't look for, really people that agree with me, but the negativity side of it, I can't stand. Where people are just identifying issues. It's more about creating solutions. There may be a difference of opinion in some way, but really it's a function of really just kicking out the bad apples. And sometimes you don't know that because a lot of times they put on an air or they're what we call landmine partners. They don't show who they truly are until shit hits the fan in a bad way.
So how do you tell? Like, do you really just have to wait until something bad happens like
For a
that?
landmine partner, unfortunately, yeah. Think of it this way: I call them landmine partners because imagine that you're taking a walk. You're about 200 miles out in, I don't know, the desert or the forest or something, and you hear a click. You stepped on a landmine. So you know that if you lift up your leg at any point in time, what's going to happen to you, Maddie?
You get electrocuted?
Or die or whatever the hell it is. And if you stay there in the middle of nowhere, with nobody around, you can't call anybody. What the hell's going to happen?
You'll die.
Yeah, eventually you're waste away. So unfortunately, when you hit a landmine partner, which happens, for me, it happens about once every 8 to 10 years. There's only one thing you can do. You can go ahead and take your medicine and move on, which means that you're going to take a hit in some way, and there's no shortcut around it. None. You just get hit, and it's a landmine, and hopefully you're not killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so are you able to tell a difference between criticism and constructive criticism in this space? Are there a
Well,
lot
you
of people that will just completely bash you and be like, well, I'm being constructive?
Well, it depends. I find that constructive criticism usually has suggestions on what to do. Criticism is just pointing out an act that perhaps they don't agree with. And so if it's constructive, then it comes with some type of solution. And that's kind of like what I was saying earlier, that I'm not really about people that are just point out problems. Anybody can point out a problem and you can criticize anything. Hey, right this second, I've got a big fever or cold blister on my lip. Yes, that's attack me on that. How dare Chris go and do this? But at the same time, people that go ahead and offer something in return for what they're saying typically are coming to you with value. And so it's whether or not they come to you with value that's important, at least to me and startups.
What do you consider value to be?
What I consider value to be is something that typically is actionable or gives insight. So either they're telling you literally exactly what to do because they've been in this scenario, or there's insight, kind of like the landmine partners. I've been around them and I know that you hit one, there's no coming out unscathed. You're going to come out hurting in one way or another. That it gives you the insight as to what they experienced.
Do you have any like unique collaborations coming up for Gusher?
In terms of that, I can disclose, no. There is one that's in the works. We'll see what happens, whether or not it happens. We're not really great at collaborating with other companies. Typically, we don't really play well in other people's sandboxes. We do things a little bit differently. So, in many ways, I kind of wish there were, but at the same time, we're really great at building our own ecosystem.
That's amazing. That's a perfect company to be around, quite honestly.
We think so.
Of course. And what do you define success as? Like just as a whole, not necessarily for a company in Gusher,
I mean,
but just
for me, sure. Well, I mean, for me, it's just if my family is happy, then I'm happy. I mean, I keep it very, very simple. If my family is happy, then I'm definitely happy. But at the same time, I didn't say comfortable. I didn't say relaxed. I didn't say that everything was handed to them, because that's not the case. And it's not something where I spoil my kids, although I probably do if some from an outsider. But it's really if they're happy and my wife's happy and everybody's happy, that really is key. That's become the most important thing. In the beginning of my career, it was primarily money and measuring it, and that was really the yardstick of it. But I don't really measure it that way. I think it is still an important metric when it comes to determining what to do and what not to do and how to proceed. But I don't do it now just for money. I do it because of impact, and that's what makes me happy and successful.
for impact.
For impact, impact's extremely important.
It's very insightful. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Do you have any tips for people that are looking to start startups?
Sure, I have one thing, actually two things. If you're starting a startup, the one of the biggest mistakes that founders make, especially in the beginning stages, until they learn not to, is that you must set your standard, your personal standard, insanely high. You need to set your personal standard high, high, high. Why do I say that? Because when you're doing a startup, even if you're a one-person company, two-person company, if you don't set a high standard, you're going to go ahead and be a race to the bottom with your people. You're going to be a race to the bottom with the product. You're going to be a race to the bottom. And if you set it really high, even though it may be hard to go ahead and reach, the fact of the matter is that just sets the tone of the company. And number two, under no condition, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a meteor striking the earth. I don't care if you're hit head on in a collision in Cleveland, Ohio, or if you're 16 years old in the ICU. You never give up. Never, never, never give up under any condition. No one else is going to do it for you. No one is going to help you in some great way. No white knight is coming to your rescue. It's up to you to solve it, and you are enough to solve it. So never give up.
Never give up.
Never.
100%. That's something I can't stress enough. I've worked in mental health for so long, and you see so many people give up. There's a book called Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the book is like once you lose hope and you give up, like you're done for.
Yep.
Like that's when you metaphorically die, but in the book, people were actually dying because it was about the Holocaust.
Yeah, because it's brutal. And this you've heard this, and this is nothing new, but almost in a way, when you really are ready to give up, when you are really, I mean, like really truly ready to give up, what ends up happening is you're making a choice there as to almost in a way, am I literally just extinguishing my soul, or am I going to change? Okay. So almost in a way, it's just that point, that little shift of extinguish the soul or change. And the change is just a process. It's taking one little step to change because something needs to change. And usually it has to do with you, the person that is trying to do this. And if you start making those internal changes, those self changes, stuff starts to happen in a good way.
So would you say you're never okay with complacency?
Oh, it's my antithesis. Absolutely. I can't stand it. I can't, I mean, literally, it would drive me nuts. I can't stand it.
Me too. I think that's one of the reasons why I moved to Philadelphia. I was just like, I need something new.
And go to New York if you want a further taste of that.
Yeah, I love New York. Philadelphia was just a step
Yeah,
towards New York because New York from Texas is a very, very big change.
sure. Absolutely. Huge change.
But I love changes, so
Yeah.
maybe that'll be my next spot.
I like change. Change is good. Can't live without it. I insist upon it. I get so damn bored. I need change.
Me too. Like when I was a kid, I really, really hated change. Like I absolutely hated it. I would scream and cry. And now as an adult, I love change. Like I hate it being the same. So I really wonder where all of that came from, like the big shift.
Well, I think it's just evolving. It may just be evolving as a person. You start to discover things about yourself. As a kid, I was more or of an introvert. I used to remember I would be scared to get on the phone. My mom would be, get on the phone and call this or order, something from the restaurant or find out about reservations. And then I went to New York and, became a broker and all these other things. And, suddenly no introvert. So you became more of a different person. So it's evolving.
Yeah, for sure. But thank you so much for coming on here today. I really appreciate your time and efforts.
And my apologies for calling you Maddie, Madeline. I saw it on the screen right here in your
No, it's fine.
okay. I want to make sure that was okay.
I go by both. Maddie's my nickname, and then I use Madeline for more like professional things because
Yeah,
that's on my email and my legal name. So that's
sure.
just what I
I just
use.
saw it and I didn't see anything else on there and I instantly went to that. So
Yeah, I just think Madeline sounds like a bit more professional than Maddie.
good
So,
name. Stick with it. It's a good name. Either is good. Really.
but thank you so much for coming. I really, really appreciate it.
Sure.
And
If
it
I can
was
help,
amazing having you. You're such a powerful and insightful person.
thank you for having me. If I can help you in any way, shape, or fashion, just reach out and let me know. I know a lot of people in the finance industry, tons. So if you need anything, just let me know.
I may ask you for that
Yeah,
because I'm trying to get into it. I'm an intern in venture capital right now, or a venture studio, I should say.
sure.
And I don't know where that's going to lead me. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, don't hesitate because I'm connected to about half the VC community out there for real. I'm either connected to whales, like really big, or I'm connected to extremely poor founders, one or the other. I have nothing in the middle. Extremely wealthy people or extremely poor people. So,
Both can be good. Like you said, you got to start somewhere.
absolutely. And don't give up, all right?
I won't.
I'll talk soon. Thanks for having me.
Bye.